I ain't got no home, I'm just a roaming round, just a wandering worker. I go from town to town, and the police make it hard wherever I may go, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore. My brothers and my sisters are stranded on this road, a hot and dusty road that 1,000,000 feet have trod. Rich man took my home and drove me from my door, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore. Was a farming on the shares, and always I was poor. My crops I lay in to the banker's store. My wife took down and died upon the cabin floor, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore. Now as I look around, it's mighty plain to see this world is such a great and a funny place to be. Oh, the gambling man is rich and the working man is poor, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore. I Ain't Got No Home in This World Anymore by the great Woody Guthrie, and this is a great song for the baritone uke, and I'm going to teach you how to play it on the baritone uke right now. Woody Guthrie's songs, like the songs of people like Bob Dylan and Pete Seeger, are not necessarily complicated songs, but they are hard-hitting songs. They're songs that tell stories of people, they tell truths about people's lives. So even though this is a very simple song with just 3 chords, it's a great song to be able to sing. On top of that, playing it on the baritone in the key of G, which is the key it's commonly played in, and that was the key that Woody Guthrie recorded it in. Playing it in that key on the baritone makes the chords nice and simple, but also lets us play that nice little melody part that I played at the beginning before I started singing, and I'm going to teach you that as well. You can get the chart and the tablature for this in the link down below, but I'll also put some of it on the screen so that you can follow along without having to juggle pieces of paper. Now, it's not always best to start right at the beginning of a tune, and we're not going to do that this time. That little melody part we're going to save for later on, mainly because it uses the same chords as the rest of the song. So once we've got those chords under our fingers, it should be easier to play the little melody part. So let's have a look at what happens on verse 1. We've got a G chord, a C chord, and a D7 chord. And that's it. There are no more chords in this song. And the rhythm we're going to be using for this is quite a fast sort of country rhythm, which is like this. Now, that's the basic rhythm. I was doing more than that, but if you can start off by going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just brushing with my thumb and I'm hitting 1 or 2 of the lower strings and then all of the strings. Dum ching, dum ching. 2 dum chings, dum ching, is a bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we move on to the next square on our chart. Now, the next square on the chart's got a percentage mark in it, and that just means keep doing what you were doing in the previous bar. So we keep playing that G chord. Then we have 1 bar of C and then back to the G again. So that G chord, you either want to play it with your ring finger or little finger. I often play it with my little finger because I just find it less of a stretch on the baritone, but try it with your ring finger as well, because what we're going to do, at least while we're singing the song, is keep that finger down and add the first 2 fingers for our C chord. And we don't have to take off this finger, so it's 1 less finger to move. However, if you find that too much of a stretch, you can do a 2-finger C chord. It's not a problem, it's still the correct chord. And in fact, we'll do that when we're playing the little melody part at the beginning. But try it both ways. So our first line would go like this. I ain't got no home, I'm just a roaming round. So that's G, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4. And we'll add the extra bits of the strumming I was doing later, because that's the underlying rhythm. That will work fine. The rest of it is just decoration. The second line, we've got 2 bars of G, just like we did on the first line, and then we've got 2 bars of D7, but there's an extra little thing on the end. I'll talk about that in a second. So 2 bars of G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 bars of D7. But in brackets, I've also written plus question mark, and that's because at this point in the song, Woody Guthrie tends to play either no extra bars or 1 extra bar or 2 extra bars. And this is very common for solo folk singers to do. It's just to do with giving you breathing space in between lines. So for now, don't worry about that, because the first time round he doesn't add any bars, so we'll deal with those in later verses. The third line of the song is the same as the first line. 2 bars of G, 1 bar of C, 1 bar of G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, C and G. And the last line is almost the same as the second. And again, there's something in brackets. Don't worry about that yet. So here we go. G, G, D7, G. G, another one, D7 and G. 2, 3, 4. And then we finished it apart from those mysterious little bits in brackets. So let's just play through that first verse and I'll sing it as well. I'll do it a little bit slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. I ain't got no home. I'm just a roaming round. Just a wandering worker. I go from town to town. And the police make it hard wherever I may go, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore. Now that is 99% of the song. Everything else is the same pattern, but with just a couple of little variations. So before we move on to the variations, let's have a little look at that extra strumming I was doing. And all it was, bear in mind everything I'm playing so far is a downward strum, was just catching the strings on the way back up as my hand naturally comes up to do the next strum. Now I'm doing this with my thumb. You can do it with your finger, but I recommend you do this one with the thumb because of what comes later. It makes it easier to switch between the melody playing and the chords. But try it whichever way suits you. The extra bits I'm doing are this. Instead of little, big, dum, ching, you can go dum, ching, little down, up, down, a big down, up. So the ups are just catching maybe the top couple of strings. That little first strum is catching just the lower strings. And then on beats 2 and 4, we're doing a big strum. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and so. Really it's down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, but it doesn't sound like that. We've got a little bit of finesse that we need to add. So down on your lower 1 or 2 strings, up on your highest strings, then down on all the strings, and then up on just your highest strings. That's it, because the next half of the bar repeats that. Little down, little up, big down, little up. Those little ones are just catching 1 or 2 strings, not all 4. That might take a bit of getting used to, but you can certainly play the whole song just doing that. Both work perfectly well, so you do what suits you. So before we learn that melody part, we just need to talk about those mysterious extra bars. And actually, even though it might be a bit odd for us, having played maybe pop and rock songs, to get used to this idea that a singer might just add an extra bar or two. It's very common in early blues and folk songs like this, particularly when it's a solo singer and, say, guitar or ukulele or banjo player. So that person is doing both things together, rather than having to, look at each other and go, is the person going to sing now? I don't know. Oh, they've started singing. Oh, I forgot to change chord. Or a whole band, they really need to know when the chord changes are coming. But if you're a solo performer, you can change to the next bit of the song when you're ready. So in verse 1, there's no extra bar at the end of line 2. But there is this bit at the end where it says vamp until ready. That just means keep playing that G chord until you're ready to sing verse 2. And of course the verses all start on a G, so you don't have to worry about a chord change. So you'll get something like this. I ain't got no home in this world anymore. And I can stay on this chord as long as I want until I'm ready to sing the next verse. Here we go. My brothers and my sisters are stranded on this road. It just lets me take a break and not rush through the song, have a breath and pace myself. Now the other thing about these added bars, like at the end of line 2 where it's a mystery number of bars, that's often because different verses have different numbers of syllables and you might find it difficult to squeeze all the words in and breathe. And as a solo singer, you can absolutely just add a bar and take your time. So for example, in the second verse we have this. My brothers and my sisters are stranded on this road, a hot and dusty road that 1,000,000 feet have trod. 1, 2, 3, 4, rich man took my home and drove me from my door. I've got an extra bar in there just so I'm not going a hot and dusty road that 1,000,000 feet have trod. Rich man took my home. Now that's not too bad to do, but if it's on every verse you might find yourself getting out of breath. On verses 3 and 4 there are 2 bars added there. So, was a farming on the shares and always I was poor. My crops I lay in to the banker's store. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wife took down and died. And on the last verse it's, now as I look around, it's a mighty plain to see. This world is such a great and a funny place to be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The gambling man is rich and the working man is poor. Like that. But you don't have to do that many bars. Though if you want to play along with Woody Guthrie, that's giving you a little bit of a heads up as to what's happening. Now you've got everything you need to play the song. And as it's a simple song left-hand wise, it really gives you the opportunity to work on your right hand and get a nice feel. Starting off with just downstrokes and then you can add some upstrokes. You don't have to do them all the time. You might add more in between verses and then when you sing, simplify it. All of this is not getting tangled up in what's the strumming pattern. It's getting the rhythmic feel and then playing around with that feel. Now let's learn that little melody part at the beginning. I'll play it again for you, but a little bit slower. It's all based around the chord shape. So all I'm doing is adding a finger or taking off a finger, and then this hand really has to work to pick out the right string at the right time. And that's why I've suggested doing the whole song with the thumb, because it's much easier to play a note with your thumb and then a strum or a different string. And that's a little exercise you can do, is to hold down any chord and see if you can play the first string, then a strum, then the second string, then a strum, then the third string, then a strum, then the fourth string, then a strum. And then just sort of mix it up, and that'll really get you targeting the right string. That's probably the hardest thing about playing this bit. So let's work out what happens on each chord so that we can break it down a little bit at a time. What we've got here is our, now we're going to talk about first, second and third and fourth strings. The first string is nearest the floor, the fourth string is nearest the ceiling. So we're going to play the third string, which is your G string, while we're holding down the G chord. And we're going to play that string, then strum the whole of the 4 strings, then play that open G again, then hold down the 2nd fret on the G string, but we still want to keep hold of the G chord. So your ring finger or little finger, whichever one you're using to hold down that 3rd fret on the E string, has to stay there. So you're going to have to figure out which other finger. I tend to use my little finger for the G chord and my 2nd finger for the 2nd fret note here. So we've got open 3rd string, strum, open 3rd string, add the 2nd fret of that same string, no strum this time, and then we again miss out a strum and go straight to the 2nd string, then a strum, then the 3rd string, then another strum. So we've got this. So there was only one note that I added with my left hand, and that was that 2nd fret note once. Everything else is just picking out notes from the chord. One more time. And at speed, it sounds so much better. And don't worry about being too precise about this. If you hit one of those strings and catch a string next to it, it's not the end of the world, because all of those notes are in the chord anyway. So if it gets a bit rough around the edges, it's not going to sound terrible. In fact, this kind of music is often better when it's a little rough around the edges. The next chord we've got is our C chord, and we don't have to do anything with our left hand on the C chord. We just play the 4th string, then a strum, then the 3rd string, then the 4th string, and then we're back to our G chord again, and we play the 4th string, and then fill up the rest of the bar, just strumming the same rhythm as before. 4th string, 3rd string, 4th string, 4th string, but now a G chord. Put them together and we get this. So on the next line, we're still on a G chord, and we do something just like we did before. G, strum, G, 2nd fret, so exactly the same as before. Then we move to the 2nd string, then back to the 3rd string. That's identical. But this time we're going to go to the D7 chord, and when we go to the D7 chord, we hold it down, we play the 3rd string, the G string, strum, the 3rd string again, and then we play the 2nd string, but we briefly lift up our index finger to hit the open 2nd string. Then back to the 3rd string, and while we're doing it, we can put that finger back so that we can strum the rest of that bar. So that little bit sounds like this. And that whole 2nd line sounds like this. The 3rd line we already know because it's the same as the 1st line. The last line is a little bit different. We start again on our G chord and on our 3rd string, our G string, but this time we're not going to add that 2nd fret note. We're going to jump straight to the B string, the 2nd string. So 3rd string, strum, 3rd string, 2nd string, then we add a note. We add the 3rd fret on the 2nd string. Now if I'm already holding this down with my little finger, I'm going to use my ring finger. If you're already holding that down with your ring finger, you'll probably use your 2nd finger. So we get this. Now you can leave that down while you strum, but then you're going to have to take it off again because we play the open B string, then the open G string, and then we're back into the next bit of the tune, which is just like we did earlier on with that D7. We lift up the index finger to get the open B string, back down to the G string, and G, and fill up, and at that point we can play that G chord as long as we want. So let's look at that last line slowly. D7, lift up, put it back, and there you go. If you follow along with the tablature, you should be able to get that, and it's nice to use that as a little introduction to the tune. But if you wanted to, you could throw it in the middle as a little instrumental break, or do what I did at the end, which was just play the last line of the instrumental, just as a little way of rounding off the song. So to finish off, let's play through that whole instrumental bit nice and slowly. Here we go. And there you go. It's a great song to have in your repertoire. Works great on the baritone uke. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.